Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
All right. Here to talk about void dances in the UK, I guess.
Void dance is boring.
It's really just, elf supremacy, really.
Yeah, surprisingly, I heard that I've got a few people texting me, oh yeah, like now I want to play Void Dancers. It's like, yeah, okay. I do not consider myself a master of that team by any measure, but yeah.
No, I mean, it's just interesting that right now, like, the winds of change have kind of set up, like, oh, the elves are actually, they all have, like, interesting plans right now.
Yeah, they do, definitely.
I was just looking over my Void Dancer collection again, and I have an extra player, so I'm like, I could potentially drop the Death Jester or the Shadow Seer. I don't know if that makes any sense ever, but
I think it does make, like, actually, this is something that made me realize that I had to chase one of my mates, Serkan, who you might have met at Worlds as well, because he has like 3 different teams of Void Dancers. And it's like, Serkan, I really need an extra arm with this, or that weapon, because I realized that in certain cases I do drop the Death Jester for an extra player.
Yeah, that would be the only one I would drop. I can't see dropping the Shadow Seer because
Shadow Seer is just
the silent gun is
crazy.
just too good to let out.
That unit is just way too crazy.
Yeah, he seems way overtuned right now. But the Death Jester is a little kind of gets stuck, and he's not quite as dangerous in melee. So I could make the argument for it.
because the Death Jester is heavy reposition only.
Death Jester is heavy position only on the single target profile, and it's like heavy dash only on the torrent profile, which I never ever use because like heavy dash only, and you lose a die by sole reason of you shooting torrents. It's like, oh no. Not really. And a good player shouldn't give you a torrent target anyway, especially the one that you can just dash to. So
yeah, you get lethal 5 maybe on in the dark, and that's basically the only maybe situation.
yeah, fine, you should say that. Into the dark is where I most often drop the Death Jester.
Yeah, he's just like not very mobile, and it just ends up getting stuck, I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I do tend to drop the Death Jester every now and then on Into the Dark versus Hordes specifically. Just because I think that let's say you're facing Inquisition, you really want to 2-for-1 them as often as possible. And Death Jester is a piece that like your opponent shouldn't really be allowing you to double kill with a Death Jester, whereas you may very well do it with a player versus a Horde team. So you want to charge, like kill and shoot, or the other way around. But with Death Jester, it's not really possible. So yeah, this is why I tend to drop the Death Jester.
Did you ever use the silly Death Jester combo where you're sitting behind a portable barricade and you have the 3-up invuln save and you're just tagging people?
Not really. Like the only scenarios where I realized, oh yeah, I'm gonna use the portable barricade. These were matches where I realized, oh, I could have done something better with my equipment choices in hindsight. Like after the game, I was like, yeah, this seemed to be cool at the time, but not really. So I would have had a better option had I chosen to do something else with the equipment rather than a portable barricade. I also don't tend to play the move shoot while moving ploy for the Death Jester to move a bit, let's say on advantage shoot and then move back. Like I did like once or twice over the course of the 2 tournaments. I was like, yeah, did I really want to spend a command point on that? Not really. And it also telegraphs that you may want to do that a lot. Like, I don't think it's really worth it. You've got better things to spend your command points on than that.
So how many times were you actually thinking of dropping the Death Jester, and did you drop the Death Jester during your Worlds run?
Oh yeah, I did. If I'm on Into the Dark and I'm facing a horde, so the two horde matchups that I played would be Inquisition versus Carlos on Gallowdark, Groot versus Orion, also on Gallowdark, and I think I played Inquisition versus Carlos again on Volcus.
Yeah.
And I think I dropped the Death Jester once or twice, maybe. Yeah, but exactly for the reason I mentioned. Like, I just want to make sure that I can double kill as often as possible, and on ITD especially. Like, I'm really not expecting any of my opponents to allow me to double kill with a Death Jester, whereas yeah, again, player can do that. So yeah, we'll do that. I would probably not do that into elites because surprisingly, Death Jester, if you give him the balanced reroll, then he really becomes quite deadly. I also always take the Slater Toxin rounds, and he's a good target for that equipment. So yeah, like I like him into elites a lot, a
And
lot.
that's because
Yeah,
against elites, you're able to push damage through by getting to 5 attacks on 3s for 6 effectively with the Shrieker Toxin, and then also getting
yeah, with
balance.
rending as well. So
Yeah, with rending.
that's crazy important. That if you like, of course, it was way cooler last edition where you would shoot a 12 wound marine with a weapon that effectively deals 6 damage and a crit and has rending. But even this edition, what it means that is that if you have one crit and you go into another one with rending and you deal 2 mortal wounds, you bring the marine down to 12, which means that the marine cannot take 3 regular hits or else he'll die. So I think it's really good. Of course, you can't assume that you're gonna finish the marine off like in one shot, like a healthy marine. Sometimes it does happen, but in most cases, you probably want to bring them down low enough so you can then finish them off with any other player, or you maybe already have a marine that took like 4 to 9 damage, and then you want to finish them off with Death Jester.
And you've been using Void Dancers for most of this edition, or it was just like a little bit before Worlds you had like decided to switch into Void Dancers, right?
Um, so I wouldn't say most of this edition. So the thing is, before Worlds, I only managed to get like less than 30 games in. At first, I played like 1 or 2 games with Halfkin Salvages because I spent the last season of the second edition mostly playing Halfkin Salvages.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that team a lot. But at first, I was like, okay, this team might be a bit too complicated for my first games. And in my opinion, they got slightly nerfed in comparison to the end of second edition. So I just like, okay, so not Halfkin. So what else then? I used to play novitiates a lot. I've got like probably over 300 games with novitiates in second edition. Um, and I do play many teams, so if I say I've got a 300, that's probably the team I play most with. But then I look at the rules, and I'd say like the nuns are really strong, like extremely strong. They're powerful. If someone doesn't see that, like they're wrong. And admittedly, I didn't see that at first. But at the same time, when I saw it, I was like, do I really like them? Not really. Like, I think the way they play, the way they're strong now is extremely toxic for the opponent. I just don't want to, like, play with the same team over and over again in this edition as well. And then B, I don't want to be in that position where my opponent always feels bad when they walk away from the table, because if you think about novitiates, like you've got like if you punch them in melee, you have to kill them in 2 hits for 5, or you don't kill them. And in shooting, like you really have to shoot well, or else you'll heal them. I was like, no, I don't really want to play that team. And the other thing is that yeah, they're super strong, but they develop the board quite slowly. So because they want to plant those beacons, or the way my friend from London referred to that, plant damage reduction. Um, and you want to plan that, and the pace of your board development is in a way dictated by those plant beacons. So then I switched. Okay, so what other teams do I have or enjoy playing? I was like, okay, so Void Dancers. We've got 8 pseudo squishy marines that are extremely fast. And I read the ploys. I was like, yeah, I think we can work with that. And um, testing, I realized that Legionaries is, I'd say, like, people probably won't believe that, like, or they will say that I'm straight up crazy, but I think this is a very good matchup for Harlequins, Legionaries. Like, I played this matchup 8 times. I never lost. I had 1 draw, which um, could have been a win on my end, and 7 wins otherwise. So it's not like this is a team where if someone tells me, "Oh, I'm playing one of the top teams in the game," it's Legionary, and I'm like piloting Void Dancers. I'm like, okay, so this is probably one of the top teams I want to see most. Definitely more than Warp Cavern. Then I realized, okay, Warp Cavern is probably that was my like one of the early takes before the Worlds. Is that it wasn't Legionary, it was actually Warp Cavern being the strongest team in the game. And I was worried that my other teams wouldn't like have the tools to even fight them. I think Void Dancers do have those tools. I'm slightly over 50% win rate with against Warp Cavern, but I think in this meta game is enough. Versus
Yeah.
Inquisition, I think they're winning. The Void Dancers, that is. And the matchup that I did not consider at all, because as I said, I played like less than 30 games before Worlds, was Necrons. And then I managed to face them once at a tournament a week prior to Worlds. I won, but then I realized, so this is going to be tough. I played them once at Worlds as well, against Callum Foster. I lost by 1 point. Ultimately, I think I made a big mistake at the beginning of the game, and that cost me the game. Even though like other things happened and like dice and stuff, but like ultimately, I think I could have won that game if I knew the plan that I would have right now facing that team that I didn't know at the time.
And part of the difficulty against playing against the Necrons right now is that they have the Psychomancer that says no injury, or not no injury. It's no criticals and no rerolls, which does dampen quite a bit of the Void Dancer's initial punch when you go into enemy lines, right?
Yeah, so there's that. Like, well, you've got 5 attacks on almost every single operative, which is great because you may see, like, okay, I can actually still kill you if I want to kill you in melee. But the problem is, like, you don't really want to take the mortal wounds when you charge them, and they will always punch you back with something. So if you, let's say you take 2 on average, and then they punch you with, let's be generous, with a crit, that means you're taking like 6 damage before you kill an immortal, and that's way too much. Because the other thing is that, okay, you'll kill them, and then they will kill you, and they will get up. And it's like, you're getting flashbacks from watching Terminator movies, and it's like, no, they just keep coming back. And I think this was the mistake that I made against Kellen, is I won TP2 initiative. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna charge you. I'm gonna kill one of your guys, and then maybe we will try killing another, like and I did that, and that exact scenario happened. Like, he killed me back, and then he got up. I was like, okay, so that was a big mistake. The way I would face them right now, especially with elves that are extremely fast and mobile, like Necrons are slow, so that means that um they will not get to your side of the board unless they want to overextend, I think. If you play like from your back line and you play cautiously. So what I would do right now is I would probably just try playing Plant Beacon like safely and not engage at all, because they will like come back until probably like late of TP3, staging for TP4, where for TP4 I would go like balls to the
gas
wall,
on.
full aggression, like
Yeah.
no limit, guns blazing. everyone has to kill as many operatives as possible because they can't like come back again, and this is why you want to win. But it is possible that with the like slow mobility, you won't even have to do that. You'll just like max plant beacon and your primary op, and then if you manage somehow to get ahead on crit up, then that might be enough. But that makes
Yeah,
it
you can take
extremely boring game.
right now, the other teams that are doing well that are in the elf sphere of influence are the mandrakes, who have the fun way to break scoring by just doing surveillance. So you teleport into the back line and you surveil your opponents for 9 points. And then if your opponent is not paying attention and they took contain for whatever reason, or take ground or whatever, and you can teleport in one of those boxes and break scoring, it really messes up people's scoring cadence. So it sounds like right now you're thinking about Void Dancers in a similar way, where you can just kind of not have to commit into them and just outmaneuver them, which is something Jason really likes doing.
Yeah, I think like the part of Void Dancers or any elf team, I'd say, virtually, is that you're so extremely mobile, and that applies to Void Dancers even more because they have smaller bases. So that means that you can, like, quote unquote, cheat on terrain, like not cheat like literally, but you can place barricades, razor wires in a way that only your bases will fit. And even against hordes like Inquisition, if they take those
The Casper
auxiliary
kits are
models
too
that
big
are
now.
like 28 millimeters, like that means that they can't get through. That means that with your 7-inch move, climbing everything for one, and a free APL, meaning that you always get like a dash where you want, you can really stage up the board in a way that you can run away. And that's what I love about Void Dancers. Like always plant beacon, and you just like I never scored less than 8 points across 2 tournaments with them. On plant beacon and primary op.
So the maneuverability combined with the equipment terrain allowed you to really create safe bubbles for you to move around in, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Like when it comes to equipment specifically, I saw, I read a few things like on Discord here and there, and like I tried like learning as much as I could, and I saw that people really enjoyed taking the two masks, like the understudy mask and the death mask, as the equipment. And I really don't like either. I think they like a waste of equipment choices. Like you don't really get much out of them. Um, if you say, "Oh, I'm taking the death mask for a free command point," like that death mask assumes that you're losing so many operatives already to gain a command point. If you're playing to lose out, like to lose operatives to gain a command point, something is wrong. And then the understudy mask, there's probably a slightly better choice, but I think it's unnecessary because you don't really need to have an operative pick up that pivotal role, or prima donna, like one of my favorite opponents from Worlds called that operative. Um, and you don't really need to have an extra prima donna after death for the first one. So I prefer to take the Shrieker Toxin rounds, the Wravebone Talisman. That's pretty much what I always take. And then sometimes it's a smoke grenade or two, and the razor wire and barricades, just to create as many obstacles for my opponents to move around the board as possible.
It's funny how history rhymes like that. Last editions, Void Dancers would do similar things with barricades, just creating stuff to leave in front of their opponents. Obviously, by the end of last edition, that kind of went away because you had to pay for climb like everybody else. But at the beginning, when they could actually fly, that definitely was something that Void Dancers used to do.
Yeah, it used to be the case. I remember I played them on release, the very first tournament we had in London, when Void Dancers became legal in the second edition. I played them. I was like, oh, they are really strong. I remember the between the people that went 4-0, there was myself and my mate Serkan, and we both went 4-0 with Void Dancers. I was like, okay, this feels like super powerful, like to the extent like broken level powerful. That used to be the case. I think right now they're not broken; they're just well positioned.
Yeah, I think right now it feels like elves are pretty well positioned. Me and Jason do stats every week, and it turns out that most of the elf teams are doing pretty well because their natural hunting ground is actually okay, because they have okay matchups against the elites, and then they're pretty good against most of the hordes, with the 3 APL versions of elves doing a little bit better, and I think Mandrake specifically doing better against elites because the ability to surveil breaks some autopilot habits, and power swords are good enough to tango. Have you given any consideration to playing other elf teams, or right now are you still on Void Dancers? What have you been playing recently?
So that's the thing. Like I started playing miniature war games with Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I started with dwarves, and I've been a dwarf all my life when it comes to team selection. So if I'm to choose between space dwarves and space elves, it's in most cases going to be space dwarves. However, Harlequins being the clowns, the jesters are the sole exception. I even bought a jester's hat, but I forgot to bring it to Worlds. I have it with me at home. I brought it to the tournament the week before Worlds in London with like three tiny bells. Yeah, I've never played other elf teams. I had Corsairs on Sprue for a while, but then I sold them off. I was like, no, I don't want to play in that team. I don't want to play with that team. I like Void Dancers specifically because they do have free APL and they do what I want them to do. But there's that, and I do agree with the comment you made around the hunting grounds. But I've heard from many people, oh, when they will nerf the elites and Inquisition, it's gonna become super good for Void Dancers. Like first of all, if they do that, I would expect them to possibly touch Void Dancers as well, because I think like I don't know how, but I think they should be touched in some manner. I think they're slightly overtuned, not like by far margin. Obviously, we have to hit Warp Cavern way harder, but I think like we should touch Void Dancers. On the other hand, if they do nerf, let's say Warp Cavern Legionary and Inquisition, rework Novitiates and Necrons to remove the toxic aspect of these two last teams,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden we might see more Commandos, Felgor, and these are the teams that just smash elves. That's like just too tough, and there's too many of them. So the funny thing is that the metagame may balance elves out like naturally.
Yeah, I think that's what happened in the edition right before us, right? Elves were very good initially against Astartes way back in Kill Team 2, and then the rise of Felgor and Commandos came up, pushed everyone else out of the meta, and you either had to deal with them or get squished by the 10 wound brick, and now we're kind of rotating all the way back into a full circle.
Yeah, in a way, and I'm I'm a bit concerned about the next balance data slate because like people are like, oh yeah, we need to nerf elites to the ground. I'm like, no, we don't. Like,
Yeah, I
I
like
really
Elite.
am not looking. I may have the unpopular opinion that I actually prefer this meta game than the one we had at the end of the second edition. I'd say that we've spent so much time playing metagame where the shooty hordes are the very best teams that like I like this for a change. Yes, I do agree that the elites are too strong and they are a bit overtuned, but like if we nerf them too much, we will be back in the realms of like Brook Brothers and the Inquisition of that but BS. So
You know,
so I'd say like it will be better for us to end up with a meta game where we have Marines that are actually strong as Marines should be. So yeah.
Yeah, and like there is like plenty of counterplay. Like you were talking about doing well against Legionary in most of the games there. Do you have any like more like specific kind of like crunchy details about your like specific methods of counterplay against elites?
I will give you like high level plan that I have versus both elites and hordes because I think it's important to understand that at least for me that when you're facing elites with elves, you want to play the game like a horde, and if you're facing a horde, you want to play the game as if you were the elite player. So you have to adapt in both both cases. When it comes to elites, like the obvious coolest play is that you charge someone with the fusion gunner, you bash them once with your blade, and I think you always give the gunners blades because they need to be in a situation that they guarantee they'll have a crit, because then you can punch for 5. The crit procs, the curtain falls, you play the curtain falls, fall back 3 inches, and you just shoot them in the face with a fusion. And that in itself may be enough to take off a Marine, even a healthy Marine, if you're lucky, or if you set it up, because if you give the pivotal role, the prima donna counter to your fusion, you go melodrama, so you get the rerolls in shooting. And on some Volcus maps specifically, you can put the ammo crate in a place that you can benefit from that safely. And you go ammo crate, move dash, shoot with 2 rerolls, or you charge, bash them once, fall back, and then you shoot them with 2 rerolls. That's really good into elite. The other thing I like is a combination of a Mirror of Minds from the Shadow Seer plus Death Jester, or just double tapping with Death Jester, double tapping with Shadow Seer, because that's good into elites. When it comes to hordes, my favorite play is waiting for them to use the one operative they may have that ignores obscurity, or staging it on the other side of the board in a way that when I get my last activation, I will pop smoke somewhere, then go with the Shadow Seer on a rooftop, because you ignore obscurity with Mirror of Minds. You just have to have a valid target. You're in smoke, so you're obscured yourself, so that's fine. It's like one-way obscurity. And then you go and engage to Mirror of Minds, and people will say, oh, why would you go engage? This is a silent sniper-like shot. And the reason for that is that versus hordes, if you set it up well, if your opponent allows you to do that, you may get 2 shots with a counteract. Of course, you don't do that if you don't get the second shot, but if you do, and you do it in your last activation, then counteract right away. That means that versus a whole team, you may start the game by chopping 2 of the models off the board, and then if you win the initiative, you can do something else, or just do Mirror of Minds and move backwards. Because I think it's one of the cool things about playing with Void Dancers, or Elves for that matter, is the ability for you to just move away from the opponent and just come back later. So there's that.
Yeah, you got to hit you're hitting the movement advantage as hard as possible, especially against both kinds of teams, to move around them or put your punch where you really need to. And that's part of the advantage of being the more elite elf teams, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Having said that, when I was going to Worlds and I saw my group, my bracket, and I saw that I had Orion and another player in the group on Crud, I was like, oh my god, now I have to read the rules for Crud, for serious. And I realized they're actually quite fast. They're as fast as I am, almost as fast as I am. So that's not good, because I think the biggest advantage of playing elves right now is the mobility and speed. But then it just appeared that Crud simply failed to kill elves consistently enough, because
the 3/3 damage breakpoint is not great against 8 wounds.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that if you look at specifically at Void Dancers, because obviously every single elf team has something different to it when it comes to durability, but Void Dancers, they've got Sagara's Jest, which is really good versus 4-up weapon skill. It's still decent versus 3-up weapon skill, because 1 out of 3 times it will succeed, and sometimes it's enough. If in 1 out of 3 combats it will succeed, that's okay, that's great. And then when it comes to your durability against shooting, you've got the elusive target, I think that's the name of it, the one that gives you super conceal until your next activation. I had to learn the hard way, when I play against George at Worlds, I I thought like, yeah, I can do it. Like he will have to spike a lot with that
Mind burn plus
Mindburn
devastating one.
thing.
Yeah.
And he did have a good role. And after the shot, I realized like I should have been safer, just played the elusive target for free, and that would have put me in a much better position, which it was a big mistake on my end. But then so there's that one, and there's the domino field, and people at first like were like, oh, the new domino field doesn't work as cool as the or is not as good as the previous version, the second edition version used to be. But the more I play with this team, the more I realize that this is some crazy low key, super just a scratch level ability. Sometimes, like, yeah, it was very situational, but I've had so many cases where people roll like 3 or 4 5s or 6s, and they were like extremely happy. I had a case where my opponent like shot a player on 2 wounds, and he rolled 3 6s, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you're dead." And he was expecting me just to remove the model off the board. I was like, "Okay, I just need one," and I rolled that 6. I was like, and I played Domino Field for free because players can do that, and I just survived that shot. So yeah, sometimes it's just crazy. You get extreme durability with else like surprisingly good level of durability when someone shoots you, and the 4-up invuln or ignore all piercing across the team cannot be
Can't be underestimated.
yeah, cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, Domino Field basically lets you overperform in every once in a while you'll do a shooting step and suddenly your opponent just does nothing. And it scales basically based on how bad your opponent's shooting is. So against 4-up hit rates, you actually defend a little bit better because there's fewer dice results that they can actually hit in their success pool.
Yeah, what I hate most about playing Domino Field is accurate, because that gives you success with no face
Generic
value on the
success.
dice. Yeah, it's like, I don't like that. And the other thing, which is probably like a mechanical aspect of the ability, when you play Void Dancers, you always have to remind your opponent at the start of the game. And in most cases, every single time they shoot you, please do not change the value of your dice when you retain crits as a result of lethal 5-up, rending, all of that, because even though they're crits, they still retain the original value of the dice, and that's extremely important because that thing allows you to block like lethal 5-up crits all day long with just one single 5 that you roll.
Actually a fun call out because looking at the rules for Void Dancer Troop when they came out, I thought it was a powerful ability, but because I don't really play with them, I never had to actively think about Domino Field. Do you remember, roughly how many times it's come up where suddenly in a game you mentioned right now there was a 2 health player that survived, but does it come up like once a game, every other game, like once every 3 games? Like, was it common enough where you feel like it's reliable that it'll happen once a game where it matters?
I'd say it's reliable enough that it will come up at least once a game where you want to use it. On average, like you will use it either to block more than one hit from your opponent, or you may want to use it if you roll a 5 and they've got a lethal 5-up crit, and it's just one result of 5, but that allows you to block a crit with your regular success. And because you can activate that for 0 command points on the player, importantly on a regular player, not like just any operative, that is good enough.
And that's one of the reasons why having a couple extra players floating around in the loadout is actually good, because you get another couple options for the free ploys throughout the game, right?
Yeah, like I wouldn't drop Shadow Sea ever, and of course you have to field the lead player. So the maximum you'll get is like 6, but the same that 6 is a lot when it comes to like regular troopers. And the other thing around Domino Field is that at some point throughout the tournament, I realized that even it's a weird interaction, because like in most cases when you want to play kill team well, you want to position your operatives so you're always in cover, and if someone shoots you, you will like, oh yeah, I'll retain one for cover, then I will roll the rest. But with Prismatic Blare, which is probably one of the strategic gambits I would play most often. That gives you a reroll in defense rolls if you moved. There were so many cases during the event where the opponent, like, let's say they rolled like 2 or 3 4s on their attack dice shooting you, and all of a sudden, like, okay, so I guess I'm not rotating for cover. I'm just rolling my like 3 dice with a reroll for Prismatic Blare and just fishing for a 4. And if you're rolling 4 dice, I don't remember the exact odds, but I think if you want to roll like a single, at least single result, is that around 50% on 4 dice, I think. Like just less, like than 50%, or maybe just
That's
over.
a funny note, though, because it breaks part of your mental conditioning of you see your opponent's dice rolls, and most players would just automatically pick up the cover dice and set it aside. But if you look at your opponent's dice pool, you see like, oh, they got like 3 4s. Suddenly, instead of trying to hit any result, all you want to hit is a 4.
Yeah, there's that, and sometimes it leads to some quirky positional plays because you realize that versus some opponents, you actually care more about making sure that you're definitely obscured than like caring about being in cover. Like obviously you want to be like both in cover and obscured where possible, and you don't want to stay in the open. But if you take any other team, in most cases you're like, okay, so I have to move here, so I want to first and foremost make sure that I am in cover, and then I can think about everything else because don't want to give my opponent a free shot. And with void dancers, if you know that you will take that shot anyway, let's say because you know that they have enough mobility themselves to get within 2 of you, or that they may take some crossboard angle to take a shot at you anyway. If they want to, you might as well like give them a bit less weird of an angle, but make sure that you will be obscured something, or sometimes you may make a decision to just move somewhere because you've got 4 dice with a reroll and domino field up, and it's like this is really good, and that gives you some advantage, and you'll take a shot. But yeah, I'm not saying that you want to take shots, but yeah, it gives you.
What you can do is you
Yeah.
can set up an operative in a position that normally wouldn't make sense, that can pull your opponent further
Yeah.
into like your danger bubble, just because now you have a movement option that lets you still be pretty defensive as long as domino field is still up. So sometimes, you don't need to be in cover if you can get your opponent to give something else up to take one of those shots. And if you can keep them in obscurity, losing number of dice means that you have a more powerful domino field, right? Because there's only 3 dice hitting you, then 1 die doing 2 dice's work is going to overperform.
Yeah, there's that. And the other thing is that if you combine Domino Field or with Prismatic Blare and consider that you will have Elusive Target or some other operative, then all of a sudden your durability against shooting is extremely high. And then on top of all of that, you may be in a situation when you'll have 2 operatives and the Elusive Target, because like Elusive Target lasts until the next activation of the operative. So you can put 1 on the elusive target, turning point 1, and then turning point 2 before that operative activates, you can put it on another operative. And that may severely limit the target choices of your opponent. So yeah.
Well, increasing the amount of staging and pressure that you're presenting for the future turns, right? So that first forward operative, you got Seek Light, but you have Elusive Target, so he can stage up pretty aggressively. And then the guy that's coming to back him up for turn 3, wherever that future positioning is going to be, he also projects some amount of power up front.
Yeah, there's that. And like again, this all ties perfectly into that mobility and staging, like threats on the board that Void Dancer that's extremely great at. So yeah.
Yeah, especially on Volcus, because right now they treat all of their climbs as 1 inch. So when you're going over things, you have a lot more movement options. Because as everyone who's played this edition has seen, ladders are very supremely powerful on Volcus, because some of those normal boxes you just can't get on top of. Getting into and out of boxes is kind of a pain in the butt. So being able to just have ladders on everyone all the time is really powerful.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Ladders are overrated. I would prefer if my opponent never picks a ladder. when they play against Void Dancers, because obviously when I played against both Ace and Carlos at Worlds, I saw that they had a plan. It's like both of them consistently, okay, I'm just gonna pick ladders and put them on the building that is most likely to be the front line, let's call it that way, just to even the mobility at least a bit, just to be at least more mobile and closer to what elves can do. But yeah, I do agree ladders are extremely powerful, and having like 8 operatives carrying one in the back pocket all the time is a great thing to have.
Yeah, it also means that you can do the crazy Volcus staging on turn 1 pretty much always. So you can always have a dude sitting inside the box ready to jump down from his perch if you need to. Whether or not that's always going to be useful, that's up to players to decide. So did you ever find any use? How do you feel about the contentious Volcus second floor?
Well, at first I had very strong feelings about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like that. I don't like the fact that it can put one operative on that second floor and be safe, where your opponent can never get to that floor, can never actually kill you. So there's that. But now I think it's actually okay. Maybe it's because like I play like Void Dancers. Now I'm gonna switch to probably to half game for a bit. But I think that second floor on Volcus is not like as big of a problem as I thought it would be at first. So there's that. But yeah, like if you want to be a nice guy and you play clowns, you probably want to show your opponent like, look, I can dash here, then move like 5 inches or 4 inches towards that building, climb for one, and I still have two, and I can be there. And it's a very long range, and people don't see that because like people still like it's natural for you to think, oh, it's a very tall building, it's going to take a lot to climb it. No, it's not. It's actually quite easy for elves to do. That's that.
Yeah, I think Jason has basically talked about how he thinks that the second floor is mostly a trap, but being able to send someone over there who can still project power is a thing that elves in particular seem very well suited for right now. Not every team can leave someone up on top of a building who can't do anything else outside of shoot people, but most of the elves team have some way of getting up there and then leaving reasonably effectively. Or in the case of the Void Dancers, you could just go there for staging, have your Shadow Seer just donk people from afar while slowing people down, and then when you need to get off, you can get into the other building with relative ease, which is nice.
Yeah, I think the second floor vantage I think is actually way better for like a staging point for charges than it is for shooting, just because like if you stage for shooting, it's really easy to avoid, and if you stage for charges, typically like the area you threaten more area, like especially if that second floor vantage is like in the middle of the field, and like let's say like playing Phobos for example, put a Reaver up there, playing Blades of Cain, have a Banshee jump up there. They both drop for free, and that's like an insanely strong tool.
I would agree with that, but there's one thing about Void Dancers which I dislike, and it's dropping. Because this is where you suddenly feel that you have to play a fair game, and like it's absolutely unacceptable. So that's also the reason as to why I probably don't like go for the second floor vantage as often, because I don't really like that. There are certain maps where you do, because like you'll go up there and then you can threaten your opponent's objective from it. But other than that, like I really dislike like getting high up for the purpose of dropping down. I prefer to be on the floor, protected by a barricade or razor wire, so my opponent can definitely can't reach me, and then be in a position where I can definitely reach them if I want to. So that's how I prefer. In most cases, if I do use that second floor advantage, it will be for the Death Jester. Uh, but because even if we look at Chelsea, we can say, oh yeah, it's a silent sniper, so it's great. But Chelsea has also that second ability with the unlimited grenade, which has seek, stun, silent, blast two, and I think something else is. So it has the old indirect. It is silent. It is not limited. It has lethal 5-up. It has stun and it has blast two. It's like a super stun grenade. and you probably want to have that in your back pocket to threaten like stunning multiple operatives of your opponent as well. So yeah.
Yeah, the Shadow Seer is one of the slept-on heroes of the new Void Dancer troop because he or they, whatever they are, underneath the mask, got a huge glow up in this edition. Between Mirror of Minds just
Yeah.
doing way more damage than it ever could, and Fog of Dreams basically staying the same, and the grenade just not having one use, it is kind of crazy right now.
Yeah, it is crazy. And the first time I read the Mirror of Minds, I only looked at the the number of dice going down to 5. I was like, WTF is going on? Like, why am I losing a die on my Mirror of Minds? And I just treated the rest of the text as blah blah blah. And then someone told me like read the whole ability, and I read it. I was like, oh, it's that good. And people made some matrix online. You can definitely find on Discord already or some sort, where it shows you the probability of dealing at least X damage from Mirror of Minds. And I think you can expect like 5, 6 to be like, okay, this is the like expected result, and it's great. It's just great. However, we do have to remember that in some cases you'll deal like full 8 and you'll consistently knock operatives off the board with that. In other cases, you'll just deal like 2 damage. And believe me, when I dealt 2 damage to a Marine with that, and I really needed that to be at least like 4, 5, I felt it because all of a sudden that Marine like felt extremely tanky.
Is it's interesting because it feels like you live on the two extremes of the kill team metagame because you've mentioned a little bit how you wanted to play Hearthkin, and right now we've been talking this whole time about Void Dancers. So when you switch back and forth between the faster and slower teams, do you have things that you need to think about actively when you switch from one to the other? Like when you're going to Void Dancers, you have 7 inches of movement. We've talked a little bit about how you've got tricks to set up barricades to screen out your opponent's movement. When you go to Hearthkin, do you have to turn all those things off? Is it easy for you to just remember, like, I got to move way slower, I got to be way more forward position so that when I get ready to go, my guys are basically ready to back up? Whereas something with Void Dancers, you can kind of be a little loosey goosey with your movement as long as you stay far enough away because you always have the movement to back yourself up.
Well, if you take a team like Panzer Dwarfs, and you only have like 5-inch movement, you're outside of the jump back warrior. Your like move and dash is just slightly faster, or you get just 1 inch more out of that. Then just move from Void Dancers who have free APO as well. So at that point, it really feels unfair. But when you do play like slower teams, I guess the first thing that you have to consider is that, unfortunately, if you choose a slower team, you absolutely have to commit way more, and you have to take better positions. So in that way, slower teams will not forgive you as many mistakes when it comes to positioning, because simply you may not be able to reach certain locations, and no matter how much you want, like you just won't be able to do it because you're just too slow, short legs and all that stuff. With Void Dancers, I really enjoy playing elves from my backline and moving them up 2, 3 inches, the first turning point, and in many cases it is enough to still threaten the entire midsection of the board or do what I want them to do, to plant beacon or something, or all the while staying extremely safe. With slower teams like Halfking, aka Panzer Dwarfs, you just have to assume that your durability will be enough to withstand whatever is coming your way, because you do have to commit way more.
Yeah, there's no room for you to play a fence sitter's backline positioning. And right now, the Hearthkin Salvager is getting a lot of value out of basically just like hard committing on turn one, I think.
Yeah, so I think everyone knows that play with the jump back warrior, where you like go into like, I'm going to show you that alpha strikes still exist. And you go with your last activation, dash reposition, And then ancestors that are watching or +1 APL shoot with crack, which has, if you play everything well, it has accurate one from the scan ability from your locator, and you've got a reroll, and you've got a +1 to hit, and it's like, okay, it's really strong. And when you steal initiative turning point to you do it again, I get that. It may be very strong. And versus some teams, it will give you an extreme advantage if you kill like 2 out of 3 targets that you're gonna try to aim at between 2 shots and 1 charge. However, I have to say that from my standpoint, this is probably the only model that gives you some mobility and ability to stage certain board control situations, or simply denying their contain or planting beacons if you went with that. So on one hand, yes, a cool play, that commitment turning point one. On the other hand, Jump Warrior is probably one of, if not the most important piece in that team, and I wouldn't want to just lose it to some Alpha Strike too quickly. I would prefer to make sure that I do have that piece to carry on playing with it for the remainder of the game, not just beginning until the beginning of turning point two.
Do you have other things that you think about actively when you're trying to come up with a game plan for the Hearthkin for this edition? Because obviously that's kind of a repudiation of the current meta thing to do. Whether I do think that you're right that having the ability to be able to jump out 12 inches to save a board edge is something that Hearthkin players have traditionally used that Jump Pack Warrior for. So with the way, Hearthkin look right now, do you feel like there are toys that you've been using on Void Dancers that Hearthkin have similar versions of? Or is it really just making sure those 3-up saves get into the right position to hold ground while the guns fire over the backlight or fire over your shoulders?
I wouldn't necessarily compare these two teams much. I think they are very different teams in a way. Like you play to different strengths. Like I mentioned that with elves, if you're facing elites, you want to act like a horde, and if you're facing hordes, you want to act like an elite. With dwarves, I think you're just mid-range all the way. Like you've got very specific operatives that can perform like special assignments. You've got your the knuckle duster fist fighter poser, and you've got your leader and jump pack warrior who are decent in melee, and the rest of them probably serve you as those that will just punch them for 5 on their way out. And then you've got your few gunners. Like Grenadier has been reworked, and you don't have the nanomine, which used to be a powerful asset in the second edition, but this time you do have access to stun and smoke grenades for free, which is also really good, and you do have access to a crack grenade, which is also really good. I'd say they're just different teams, and importantly, dwarves have access to contain and security as the tac op option, whereas void dancers, they probably just play plant beacons and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think being able to approach teams with fresh eyes and coming up with your own game plans is really important, especially in this new edition of Kill Team, where having a plan for 2 of the 3 tracks of scoring is really important. Plant signal beacons has sounded like, everyone basically knows that it's pretty straightforward to do, as long as you're not thinking about where you're going to plant your next beacon when you have to do it. You need to have your movement tracks kind of mapped out already.
Yeah, I think you have to. First of all, I think plant beacons is the new recover item. It's really one of the easiest tac ops to score max on if you plan it in advance. But in a way, it's a tac op where you have to plan. Okay, I'm going to place it here, 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 and then there or there, and that will give me 5 points. If I manage to squeeze in the 6th point, that's great. But if not, that's not too bad. And as long as you plan it in advance and you make sure that you have the operatives that are supposed to do that, then you're golden. And half can probably do it slightly worse than a lot worse than elves do, because elves have that crazy mobility, so you can always like spring across the board and plant the beacon where you want, or you can even like charge someone and then use that as a slight catapult to put you 3 inches further into the side of the board and plant the beacon there with the curtain falls. Again, probably one of the most important tactical ploys that is made available to avoid dancers. But dwarves like is way different. You will have to stage for it and plan for it in a completely different manner. I think your two best operatives to do that is the guy that has mission actions for one less and the jump pack warrior. Strictly speaking, both thanks to like slightly better mobility than the rest of the team. But then again, like dwarves can play security, and that is a completely different game to what void dancers do. So there's that.
Yeah, just to kind of highlight how unforgiving it is to plant beacons with dwarves. Essentially, the only way that you can have one dwarf plant 2 beacons in a row, so like one turn in the next, which is really easy to do with elves. Like, let's say you push up so that you're just far enough that you can put it outside of 4 of your objective, and you plant it behind you, and you have a perfectly straight line that's uninterrupted to go forward to plant one in front of you, and pretty much any other arrangement the dwarf can't plant another one, like easy peasy. Like you said, the one that does the mission actions for free has a little bit more wiggle room there, but then that's your entire activation. You probably like to have that extra wiggle room. You'll have to move and dash, and you're not going to do anything else there. I mean, I guess if the ancestors are watching, you could also sneak a shot in there if you need to. But it's a lot. It's a lot harder to plant 2 beacons with a back to back with one dwarf.
Yeah, I guess it's a valid point. Like, yeah, you do get a tiny bit of wiggle room, because if you move 5 inches, you plant one behind you, and that will be within 1 inch of your base behind the base. That's 28 millimeters plus 1 inch. And then you move 5 inches, and you've got 1 inch ahead of you. So you get a tiny bit of wiggle room. I get that, and it's going to be way more difficult to stage it with dwarves. And I actually haven't played as many games with dwarves yet that I want to jump across to that team, because now like so many players like got to playing elves, various sorts of elves. I'm like, I want to try something different. Yeah,
And we
so
have
there's
two
that
different
stuff.
versions of dwarves floating around in the game right now, right? There's more than just Hearthkin Salvagers. There's the Hernkin Jaegers, which, as far as the stats show, have not been doing all that well. Salvagers definitely have that hit and run tactic that's been doing pretty well, whereas the Jaegers seem to be suffering a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on how you would approach, Jaegers in the current meta?
I would approach them by keeping them on sprue for a while. This is where my Jaegers are at. They are waiting for the time, but I'd say I have like 1, 2, 3 other themes to build and paint before that. I do like the models, but that's the hobby aspect. When it comes to game plan, I really don't like the fact that you will struggle to kill those tough like muscle walls of muscle behind Ceramite. And that will be very difficult with Harnkin. Whereas Halfkin, like, you can stack up those crits. You've got your big guns. You've got operatives with power weapons, 2 of them now, so that's actually quite decent. And the rest of your team has the plasma knives, which are like still like playable, especially with that ploy that brings them up back to 4 attacks. So that's really good. And interestingly, if you play Halfkin into an elite player who has got the ignore piercing 1, this is where I think in certain cases math may be better if you take the ceaseless rending 4/5 gun than the piercing one. If you like, that will depend on the amount of crash tokens that you're going to put on them, but like if they ignore piercing 1, then your piercing 1 guns like are just regular guns with a lot of damage, so you're relying on them not passing the save rolls or you having a lot of crash tokens. And I think like that rending and ceaseless gives you a tiny bit more reliability on that, which is crazy if you think about it, because those big AP guns are supposed to kill like very well protected armored units. And then you realize, oh, I actually really want to have the other one, which is supposed to kill the chaff models from like hordes by design, at least. Maybe I'm just talking out of my mind because again, I haven't played that team a lot. I need to
I
get
think
more
you are
games
right,
in.
though. Being able to land more criticals against the teams that ignore piercing is one of the ways that me and Jason have both seen lets you get around, the natural tankiness of a 3-up save. And I think that was the same logic that one of the other elf players at Worlds was using, because he took all Dire Avengers, which, well, maybe is not the most sound strategic choice, did have a function of an argument against Legionnaire and Warp Coven, especially on In the Dark, where all of your Dire Avengers with Torrent on tap meant they were always hitting with Lethal 5. So you'd have 4 dice on 3s, 3-4 rending with Lethal 5, meaning you would pretty much just land a bunch of criticals. And if you double tap someone, then you might actually break 14 wounds over 2 shots. Maybe not over 1, but you're probably getting 8 to 12 wounds on the first time, which is not bad.
It's not bad, but if anything, I'd like to commend that player for his bravery taking Blades of Cain to Worlds. Like, definitely.
He wasn't even taking Blades of Cain. He was taking Blades of Avengers. He never
Blades of
switched.
Avengers.
It was just Avengers.
So he did do Avengers the whole way. Honestly, like, it's way more awesome than it sounds. I mean, there's still some tough matchups out there, but like, like people are sleeping on Blades of Cain a little bit. I think they're a little better. I mean, like I haven't cracked the code at all for Into the Dark, but some people swear they've got a good formula there. Like on Volcus alone, Blades of Cain are actually pretty good, especially if you just like skew Banshees and you just jump and flip over everything. It's pretty similar to Harlequins, but just everything you have is ceaseless, which is bananas. Everyone has power swords. It's just like they fully ignore all climb and drop, and you can do that twice per turning point. So you can just fly and rip all over the place and have ceaseless on every attack and just drown people in crits.
I mean, it sounds cool. I wish more players jump to Blades of Cain than jumping to Void Dancers, because I don't want to play Void Dancers if all the elf players are switching to Void Dancers around me. But luckily, Corsairs are equally juicy and spicy when it comes to what they can bring to the table. So I think we'll get some variety at least.
Yeah. I also wanted to throw in one more bit about the Hernken Jaegers. I've had a little bit of experience with them. I haven't played as them this edition, but I played against them a couple of times now. And they actually are like surprisingly killy, and they've got a lot of things going on for them. But the one thing that completely dooms them at every single level of play is their tac ops. I think it's like, what do they have? It's
they
like
have infiltration
and seek and destroy, and like neither of those are great. And for dwarves, they're just awful at all of those. It's just
okay.
It's so rough.
I didn't know that. I actually of course, there are so many teams that I don't remember all the archetypes available to all the teams yet, but now that you said that, Jaegis have only access to Seek and Destroy and Infiltration, which in my mind are the 2 worst archetypes in the game. Are like, not on a 5-inch movement. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if they had like,
it's fine with 7 inches of move, or if you have a teleport, or if you've got some stuff going on.
If you're super hordy, yeah. Just now with the little shorties. Yeah, I mean, if they had like recon and or security, like each one of those would bring their win rate up by like 12%.
Yeah, possibly, but unfortunately they don't, and like that means it's at least for now it's game over.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we don't know at all, but it'd be cool if like the balance update it was like tweaks to the tac ops. We'll see.
At some point we might get it. I'm hoping we're not gonna get it too soon. I kind of like the novelty of the tac ops and archetypes, and the fact that we're scoring this game and winning this game in a different manner to the second edition, like having 3 things to look at in itself is a huge deal. It's like it's such a big thing if you think about it. Even like looking at like I'm gonna pick my team in a way that I want to have a better breakpoint on kill grade than most other teams. Like and elves are extremely good at that, because like if you look at the breakpoints at kill grade for 8 models teams, that this is absolutely fantastic in comparison to other teams. And then like the fact that you like want to kill but not be killed, all the while scoring tac ops, which certain teams like score extremely well, like elves. And like crit op may very well be like not irrelevant, but very close to irrelevant. Like, or if, at least if you manage to keep it even for the most of the game, then you can like kind of like that at the very end if you're ahead on the other two. So I wish they will not introduce like new ones, or they won't throw it upside down too soon.
Yeah, I think right now that the tac ops are like a really good part of the game where maybe some things could be toned down a little bit, but having 4 equivalently weighted archetypes with all 3 of the scoring tracks being equivalently weighted does give everyone a little bit more room to approach what do I actually want to do in this game. Especially as you said, as an elf player, you pivot between playing the Astartes tier threat against the smaller guys and then the squishy runaway threats against the big guys.
Yeah, like it is actually very cool about void dancers is like when you start describing your team to your opponent and you say, okay, so outside of these two guys, which are Death Jest and Shadow Seer, with very specific roles, my entire team has 5 attacks in melee. Like 5 attacks, not 4. And I keep saying, like, I'm sorry, I'm not a striking scorpion. Like 5 attacks on every single operative, which is a huge thing. Like because they hit on freeze. Then if you play your in most cases melodrama well, you will have decent shooting as well. Because like 3/4 rending with balance like is quite decent versus weaker bodies. And if you add the Shrieker Toxin rounds, it may even threaten like weakening up the Marine to a level where you can actually charge them and finish them off in melee. Because if you think about it, you roll a crit, it goes rending into another one, and let's say you've got something else as well, and they miss one save all of a sudden, like okay, so they will take like 7 or 8 damage. That means that you can probably charge them and finish them off in melee, which is really good for void dancers. One of the things I think that makes these matchups look so well for the elves.
Yeah, so we're in a good position. You're enjoying the addition, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, I do. I'm hoping we will not end up in shooty horde meta game again after the first balance data state drops. I actually enjoy the fact that we have stronger elites. I enjoy the fact that Marines are Marines, like supposed to be stronger. Maybe I don't enjoy the fact that certain Marines are as strong, and I have people at Worlds like saying, "Okay, so what's your plan then?" I just play Legionaries. I just go forward. That's my plan. Never look back. Cool guys don't look at explosions, kind of thing. Um, and I don't like that much. But other than that, like I think if we get just a slight fix to the game, it will be great. Like I'm happy with teams like Warp Coven or Legionaries being at the very top of the S tier. That's fine. Just make them lose a bit more to other teams, and that's it.
Yeah. Do you have any upcoming London tournaments? I know one thing that we talked about when we were all at Worlds together was that you like the fact that, there are TOs that are willing to do the effort of making sure these big events get run. And you mentioned in the past that you've been one of those TOs. You must be a reasonably large part of the London group in the sense that, everyone seemed to know you at least at Worlds. So what's coming up in London for Kill Team?
So, to address that like holistically, I'd say like London is a great community. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
I joined the community in 2021 when I moved back to London, and I realized that the community is great, it's very welcoming, and one of the powerhouses of our community is Pete Worsley, who runs like the London Wargaming Group Guild aspect of Kill Team, and that is what binds all the players together. I myself, at some point, together with Guy Barton and Serkan Iron, we decided to create a team, the old ones. So that is a London-based team, predominantly playing predominantly at Badman Cafe in London, and this is where we play like almost on a weekly basis. There's like only a handful of us, like 5, 6 players in the old ones, but there's probably not a single week where you will not find at least one of us playing a game of Kill Team at some point during the week at Badman. So there's that. When it comes to the upcoming events, I know we have one at 1st of February, organized by Heat, if I recall, and the LWG, so London Wargaming Guild. At Dark Sphere, there's also the Warhammer World event in Nottingham coming 11th and 12th of January, if I recall, and another event organized by UKTC, also in Nottingham. Unfortunately, at the same time, apparently they had a clash because of long-term schedule in both cases. So there's that. There is a lot of tournaments coming up the first 2 quarters of 2025 in London and in the UK in general. So I would recommend all the players to go to as many as they can. Tournaments are great. Like, even though the scene is very competitive and you get players that really want to win, at the same time, these are cool guys, and the new joiners are always welcome, and we make sure that they feel that and that they enjoy the game. We tend to have awards for best rookie of the tournament. So every single time for the past few events, like we whoever the TO was would ask, okay, so for whom this is the first event, and we would track their score separately. So at the end of the tournament, if it's your first event, you probably shouldn't expect to win. And in most cases, you won't, but you may win that best rookie award. So there's something to play for as well, which is also great. I didn't actually TO an event in this season, as in 2024. Like lots of different life commitments, but I did TO some events year prior. I may end up TOing some events next year, depending on availability and time. But yeah, it's a great community, great people, and who actually want to make an effort to organize those events. Because without that, we wouldn't have such a great game and such a great hobby. Obviously, Kill Team is best served at a tournament where you can share the stories, share the games. People tend to go to a pub for a pint after the event as well. That's a tradition. Like, I don't drink that much myself. Like, I don't really drink at all. Yeah, so maybe I will skip on the beers part after the event. But other than that, like, it's, as I said, great community, great event, every single event, every single tournament. So I would strongly encourage all the new players to actually go to an event, go to a tournament, experience that themselves.
All right. Yeah, I think that's excellent. We'll make sure to get links for all of those for Badminton Cafe and the London tournament scene or London Wargamers Guild.
Yeah, London Wargaming Guild, LWG, that's the biggest community. I'd say one of the clubs in London. If I can, I would like to give a very warm shout out to the old ones, my team.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I want to make sure that my guys hear about that when you air the podcast. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure of. We did manage to steal the #1 position on ITC last season from the Spanish teams. This year, yeah, we have a slightly worse year, but we're still doing quite okay. And maybe next year we're gonna fight for the trophy of the best team globally again. I mean, surely we will, but the question is whether we're gonna succeed. But time will tell.
Yeah, nice. It's always hard to figure out where the ITC rankings are going to finalize, considering that the last event of the year is always LVO, which is basically impossible for the UK guys to get out to consistently because it is just a long schlep, basically.
Yeah, I need to go to one of the LVOs like at some point. Like the thing is like I'm not gonna go this season, maybe next one. And then I realized like last season I played like 18 or 19 events. And if you think about it, that's a lot of kill team. This season I decided to play way fewer than that. I played like I think around 10-ish events. And when I look at my results, I'm quite happy because somehow I managed to finish the podium in many of them. Unfortunately, like when I look at the points, it's like I'm just always like falling short of those premium points allocations that give you that necessary kick if you want to end up in the top 10 globally.
Mhm.
So there's that, and we probably like miss out on not having Warhammer Fest this year. Maybe, do you know if we're gonna have it next year? Have they
That one
announced
I
it?
really have no clue on what's going on for the Warhammer Fest stuff. It would be
GW
cool if we get
works in
some other
mysterious
larger
ways.
scale events. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but like at some point, I need to go to the US and play more events out there. It's just
Yeah, we've got
it's a
we've got
big
a fair
commitment.
amount on the East Coast at the very least, which is a little bit less of a schlep. Can You Roll Crit comes by to the New York area, goes to Nova and a couple other places, so maybe that could be a thing that makes sense. It's just a little bit less far.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Like I need to just plan it a bit more meticulously because obviously it's not like a quick thing. Oh, I'm just going to jump on a plane. I'm just going to go there. It's a bigger trip, even if it's like 5 or 6 hours. And when it comes to time difference, like it's 5 or 6 hours of a time difference. So that in itself is a big thing. You can't make it like, oh, I'm just gonna jump on a plane on Friday evening after work, like we would do
I think
going to
hilariously
some
enough,
tournament. Yeah,
that's one of the
UK.
things that the Spanish guys, because they've come to Worlds a couple times now. I think they did come a day or two early to get their jet lag readjusted a little bit so that they could hit their stride.
Yeah, I think this year, but at least so I heard, so I can't confirm if it's true or not, but I heard that the Spanish group came to Atlanta like on Monday.
Yeah, gives you a
So
little
they
bit of
had a
time to
few more that,
sleep,
yeah,
get
yeah.
some sunlight, reset your jet lag, and that definitely honestly makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. Like, I have my personal magic trick on how to deal with jet lag going west. So I would always just torture myself by staying like up for as long as possible. And if you're up for like 24 hours plus, then you'll like go to bed and you'll knock yourself out and you'll get a decent amount of sleep. So even though I got to Atlanta, so the tournament started on Thursday. I got to Atlanta at like 10 p.m. Wednesday. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to bed. I stayed up till like quarter to midnight. I had like 7 hours of sleep. That was great. That was like absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, one of the tips that I gave Mateusz from Poland was make sure to go outside during the sunlight and walk around a little bit. It does help you reset your circadian rhythm a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. Although when it comes to Atlanta, and like, all I'm gonna say is that now I know it was my second time in Atlanta. Previously, I went there for a Magic the Gathering
Oh,
event like 10 years ago. Um, Now I know, or at least I think I know, that they shot The Walking Dead in Atlanta for a reason. And yeah, I wouldn't like say this is the safest place on earth to uh, travel to, like tourism wise. So, yeah.
yeah, I don't think a lot of people travel into the city center of Atlanta to see the city center of Atlanta. We're there for the World's Championship just because it happens to be very convenient for food and traffic and airports and all that other stuff. But the city could be a little less janky from time to time.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. But yeah, we managed to go to the world of Coca-Cola after the event, like before, on our last day before we went to the airport. It
Yeah.
was actually quite interesting. Um, I'm a true fan of the classic Coke. So the original taste, no zero, no light, no diet, nothing of that sort, and I wouldn't try like too many other things. But yeah, I know that some people are just fans of those like sugary drinks that taste like something very chemical, artificial. But yeah, they enjoy it. So yeah, it was fun. Like I brought some treats and glasses from that place as well.
Yeah. All right, Bart. Thanks for coming on to Just Another Kill Team podcast, talking really in depth about Void Dancer Troop and getting into some of the nitty gritty about Domino Field and just some of the crazy chicanery that you got up to at Worlds. It's super nice having you on here.
Thank you very much. Like, I'd like to extend my gratitude for inviting me over to this podcast. I tend to listen to you guys regularly when I go for a run. It's like an ideal length of a podcast for me because it's an hour long. So it's like this is as much as it takes me to run my like distance, and it's like yeah, it's great. Probably not going to listen to this one because it's going to be extremely weird listening to myself on a podcast. But yeah, looking forward to all the other episodes, and I think you do a great job, and it's great to have that specific niche that you feel like filled and like joining the communities across the globe. So yeah, appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming on, and thank you, listeners, for listening until the end.